Now we're ready to start writing some HTML. First thing we're going to do, we're going to take a look at Quick Menu here and get a sense of like, okay, what content do we want to have on our landing page? So just scanning at the top, we're going to have a navigational piece. We're going to have some content in the middle here. We're going to have a button or a link, and then we're going to have an image here. So as developers look at our designs, this is kind of what they're going through. They're saying, okay, how am I going to structure all of this information in HTML? That's what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to want to do is start with this header and actually add that to our HTML. So let's go back to VS Code and we'll switch over here and we'll click into our file and we'll say create a menu for your restaurant in minutes and save that. Okay, we've added the content. This is the text we have in the design in the HTML file. And a lot of HTML files is just pure content. It's just this information that we want to add to the experience. And let's go look at this in the browser and see what happens. So the way to open our code in the browser, what I like to do, I'll just right click on this and then we will see Reveal in Finder. And again, fingers on keyboards here. This is good following along stuff to really build that muscle memory. So we're going to right click it. We're going to click Reveal in Finder. This opens up that folder that we created. And look at this. This is the same. This Explorer here is showing us everything that's inside of this folder. What we can do now is just double click it. And it's going to open. And look at this. We've got our first little bit of content appearing in our HTML. So this is really important. We preview our work in the browser because that is the computer that is interpreting what we are telling it. So now, why don't we go ahead here and we'll split our screen and we'll say this can go over here on the right and this can go over here on the left. And you can click and drag this, and if you drag it all the way, you'll hide the Explorer. We can bring that back when we need to, but now we can at least see the browser and the code next to each other. So we've added this content, but this is not HTML yet. What we need to do now is write our HTML syntax to mark up or describe this content so that way the browser can interpret it correctly. So coming back to Figma here, and we can go ahead and we can look at our layer lists, and maybe we'll make this a little bigger for a second. So remember, HTML is just like our layer list. If we look at this, we want to be describing the elements or the entities to the browser. Now what I've done is I've actually used HTML to describe all of my layers here. But if you're not familiar with HTML, you're probably using things like, this is the main content, this is the title, this button is pretty, usable back and forth, but this is how we can start thinking about our content. So we want to say this is the main piece of text on the page. How do we go about doing that? Let's come back to our browser here and let's start writing some HTML syntax. I'm going to write it below and then we'll kind of merge it together. So when we're writing HTML elements, the first thing that we start with is the HTML syntax. So let me write it out and then we'll talk about it. And this is fingers on keyboards, follow along, but we'll write it out and then we'll talk about it. We're going to start with an angle bracket. We're going to say H1 and then we're going to close that. And yours might autocomplete. If it does not, it's just another bracket and then a slash and then an H1 and then close that bracket. What is this? This is HTML syntax. And what it is, and the way we refer to this entire thing, is it's an HTML element. So this is a way that we can describe the information that we're providing to the browser. And why don't we just go ahead and say hello. Hello there. Oops. Say hello there inside of that. So this is our first piece of HTML together. So let's break it down. What do we have? We have an opening tag at the beginning. So this piece right here is what we refer to as an opening tag. It is the beginning of our HTML, and it will always start with this angle bracket. Then we write the name of the element, in this case, H1. H1 is heading 1. It is the most important piece of text on the page. I think there are up to 6 headings that you can have on a page here. So there's an H1, an H2, an H3, all the way down to 6. And these are how we do titles and hierarchy in our text copy. So 1, defining what type of heading, and then we close it. And that is the opening tag of our syntax. Then we put our content inside of it. Hello there. That is the information that we want to describe. And then we have our closing bracket. And this one's a little different. We again start with the angle bracket, then we do a slash, And then we do the name again to close it. And we are telling the browser that everything inside of these two tags is considered an H1 and is the most important piece of information on the page. So why don't we come back to our browser, give this a refresh, and look at what the browser is doing. Now that we have supplied the browser with more semantic information about the content, it can interpret it differently. It can say, I know that this is the most important piece of information on the page, so I'm going to present it as such, as the most important piece. So when we're talking about HTML, this is it right here. We are taking the information we have in our experiences and wrapping them in this syntax, in this markup, so we can better describe them to the computer. That's all we're doing with HTML. So again, coming back to our example here, why don't we go ahead and we'll cut this. We'll do Command X there, and then we'll just Command V it inside of here, and we can get rid of those extra lines and save that. And now we can give it a refresh. And now we see the most important piece of information on the page, create a menu for your restaurant in minutes. So this is the beginning of our landing page here. And this is what HTML is all about. It is the opening tag. It is the element name inside of here. And then we close that. We then add the information in the middle. And then we have a closing tag. And that closes the wrapper. And that way the browser or the computer can say, I know what this piece of information means. And that is the HTML syntax in a nutshell.